Good morning. Welcome to Elizabeth Sharon Ann Bible Study. It's Monday. It is a wonderful, magnificent, beautiful day. And we do this Bible study from the 1 year Bible. It's the New Living Translation each morning at 8:30. You can use any translation you like. We like the 1 year Bible because it's got the Old Testament, New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs all broke out daily. So once you start reading it all year long, you've read the entire Bible in 1 year, and that makes it so easy. Good morning, Sharon. So glad that our mom Sharon is on. We love you. Good morning, Nancy and Anita. So, friends, I just want to remind you to put your prayer request in the chat and your praise reports. We want to pray with you, for you. Good morning, Lynn. And you know what? It's just awesome whenever you get people together. Good morning, Donna. Like this page. If this is the first time you've ever joined us this morning, good morning, Angel. Put your name in the chat. Let us know where you're from. You don't have to put the town, but you can put the state or the country that you're watching from. That would be awesome in itself. And go to YouTube and like this page and subscribe. So as I get started, today's reading in Joshua is, I just don't even know that I want to get out of it. But you know what? In Luke, Jesus's words is really pertinent too. So, but I want to start out with my devotion because it's really good. And this is a prayer to Jesus. It says, I believe in you. Even though I do not see you with my eyes, I know you are far more real than the things I can see all around me. So when I believe in you, Jesus, I'm trusting in rock solid reality. No matter what my circumstances may be, you are the indestructible rock on which I stand. I'm thankful I can always take refuge in you because I belong to you forever. You've been teaching me that believing in you has innumerable benefits. Of course, the most obvious one is the eternal salvation of my soul. We need to know who we are and whose we are. You help me find this way through this broken world with hope in my heart as I stay in close community with you. See, folks, there's getting ready to be some swollen rivers that's got rapids going down it. And you know, that's a few miles down the road. What are you going to do whenever you bump up next to that swollen river? Lord, you've been enlarging my capacity for joy. The more I seek you and the more fully I come to know you, the more you fill me with inexpressible and glorious joy. I thought that was worthy of sharing this morning. So let's get started. Joshua 3 and 4 today. Now Moses, as we know, has passed, and he passed the baton on to Joshua. And just, you know this, but I'm going to remind you anyway. Joshua and Caleb are the only two that had been in slavery that will get to enter into the promised land. So they're like 80, almost 80 years old as they start this. Early the next morning, it's always good to start things early in the morning. You got a fresh perspective on life. You prayed and you asked Jesus to be with you. You asked the Lord to guide you. And then you start your morning. 3 days, oh, they camped there. They camped at the banks of the Jordan River. Now, you know what? This was spring, and the river was swollen. There were rapids in the winter. There was probably little whitecaps. Have you ever gone whitewater rafting? That's what I can imagine. Steve and I went whitewater rafting here a few years ago, and if I would have been told to walk across that river, we were in Red River, New Mexico, maybe we were in Taos, but I would have thought, whoa, what is it? How in the world would we ever do this? But anyway, I got carried away with memories. So they've been camping by this for 3 days. Now then, the Israelite officers went through the camp giving these instructions to the people. When you see the Levitical priest carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, move out from your positions and follow them. Now, let me remind you what's the Ark is. That's like carrying the tabernacle with you. That it contained the 10 Commandments, a jar of manna, and Aaron's staff. You know, and I thought that was interesting because remember the manna, whenever that came down and they were instructed just to go pick up what they needed for the day and not to get more, because if you got more than you needed, then it would rot. Unless if you got it on Saturday, because then it was okay for Sunday. There was specific instructions. Okay, so now we have there's a jar of manna in the ark. And it says, since you have never traveled this way before, they will guide you. Stay about a half mile behind them and keep a clear distance between you and the ark. Make sure you don't come any closer. So this was so interesting whenever you just stop and think about it. Many times, like at this time of my life, I have never been this old before in my life, right? Makes sense? I have never been down this road at this time. I need to be guided here's what I'm reading. Here's what I'm doing. I'm staying in a relationship. Jesus is with me every step of the way. For these folks, if you could just put this in your mind, here's a couple of million people, and they're supposed to keep their eye on the ark, the eye on God, to remind them of where they've come from and that he's still leading them. They can't touch it because nobody can touch that. They can only be so close to it and walk around. That way, the whole entire group that's walking will see the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant. Then in 5, Joshua told the people, purify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do great wonders among you. That's also spoke to me today. We come with expectation. We come with a clean heart. We don't have to, well, actually, you don't have to come with a clean heart, but the whole purpose is to become clean. We don't go to a hospital when we're well. We go because we're sick and we get well. We want to be purified and expect great things. Now, so far we've mentioned the ark twice, but it is so important that Joshua in chapters 3 and 4 mentions the ark 16 times. And so that tells you how significant this is. So then with him sending the Levites with the ark first, he's not sending military officers first. He's sending God's people first to go into this river and to guide people. What a thought. You know, as we see challenging times ahead, we want to go in, you know, we're thinking fight and battle. But what we need to remember, it's all spiritual warfare. So as we go on, again, they needed to have a clear view of the ark, and they shouldn't be distracted at all. They had to keep their eyes on God's presence, as we do today. In verse 6, in the morning, Joshua said to the priests, lift up the ark of the covenant and lead the people across the river. And so they started out and went ahead of the people. And then verse 7, the Lord told Joshua, today I will begin to make you a great leader in the eyes of the Israelites. See, whenever God calls somebody to lead, he equips you. They will know that I am, the great I am, is with you, just as I was with Moses. See, that the Israelites needed to be excited because they were going home. But what they were seeing was this big old swollen river too. Don't you suppose that there was a little bit of anticipation there? Like, oh, we're going to the promised land, but what, I don't know how it's going to happen. Give us this command to the priest, or give this command to the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant. When you reach the banks of the Jordan River, take a few steps into the river and stop there. When I took a few steps to that rushing river that had rapids in it, that we were going to be whitewater rafting, I don't know what my thoughts were at the time, other than, oh no, what have I paid for and what am I getting ready to do? But see, here they are. Here they are. They're there. So Joshua told the Israelites, come and listen to what the Lord your God says. Today, you will know that the living God is among you. He will surely drive out the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Zebulites ahead of you. Look, the Ark of the Covenant, which belongs to the Lord of the whole earth, will lead you across the Jordan River. And that's, we need to just have that imprinted in our thoughts all the time, because, you know, we get ready, we face things that we think is impossible. You know, whatever you might be going through today is impossible. Well, it can't be any more impossible than what a couple of million people are thinking as they're standing by this swollen river with everything they own, their backpacks, their animals, everything. They're crossing a river, and I don't know how wide it is, but I'm assuming it's pretty wide. He says, now choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. The priests will carry the ark of the Lord, and as soon as their feet touch the water, the flow of water will be cut off upstream, and the river will stand up like a wall. And this sounds like the Red Sea. It connects with that miracle of the crossing of the Red Sea 40 years earlier, where God brought them out of bondage with a miracle, and he brought them to the promised land in a miracle. See, in the face of impossibility, there's always challenges. But look to Jesus. Joshua, he always leads us. Jesus is the fulfillment of the ark. Matthew 1:23. Jesus has cleared the way to victory over all things. Colossians 2:15. As we keep our eyes on and follow behind our victorious Jesus, this river of impossibility will dry up, just as it did. The water above that point began backing up a distance away from a town called Adam. And it was so interesting. In another version I read, it said the water piled up. How does water pile up? That's a miracle in itself. Water piled. Well, the water split and it piled up above them, below, and the water below that point flowed. How does water that is stopped, how does that flow? Until the riverbed was dry. Then all the people crossed. It looked like there was no way, but God provides a way when there is no way. Meanwhile, the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Lord's covenant stood on dry ground. It wasn't muddy. It wasn't damp. It was dry, folks. In the middle of this riverbed, as the people passed by, all of those people passed by, every one of them still had their eyes on the Ark of the Covenant. Chapter 4. This is where God commands Joshua to set up a memorial of the crossing. And they were all to take stones, 12 stones, I say all, tell 12 men from each tribe to take the stones and place them in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up where you might camp tonight. This is to be a memorial of what happened, a reminder. You know, do you have something that reminds you of the days that God brought you through something? We might not build this type of memorial today, but you know what? You could have something. Do you have a picture? Do you have you got a garden that you go to that reminds you of something? Maybe it's a photo or a letter. But construct some kind of a reminder so you can remember how God brought you, your family, through the impossible. Because there's no impossible with our God. Oh man, I you know what? I am getting close to needing to go into Luke, and there's still so many things that I want to talk about in this. But in verse 14 of Joshua, it says, that day the Lord made Joshua a great leader in the eyes of all of the Israelites. And for the rest of his life, they revered him as much as they had revered Moses. So see, when God's leading you, when he's promoted you to that position, he equips you. All we have to do is trust in him. We have to believe in him. We don't have to tell people how good we are. No, that's not what we do. God is the one that is going to let them know that he has equipped you, that he has given you the leadership role. Command the priest carrying the ark to come up out of the riverbed. As soon as the priest carried the ark of the Lord's covenant out of the riverbed, the Jordan returned and overflowed its banks as before. It overflowed immediately and suddenly. Elizabeth, there's your word, and suddenly. It flowed again. The people crossed the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. This story ought to be read over and over and over. This is actually a great story for you to read as a bedtime story to the grandkids, to your kiddos whenever they're home, and please read me a story. Get Joshua out and read that to him. Okay, Luke 4:7 through 35. This is This is where Jesus is in control. Well, he's always in control. Why am I saying that? But this is really a good one. And so we know that we've already talked about Jesus healing somebody on the Sabbath, and that just got everybody all ruffled up because he did something that they didn't think he should do. So he's at this banquet on a Sabbath. And it says, when Jesus noticed that all had come to the dinner were trying to sit in seats of honor near the head of the table, and he gave them this advice. When you're invited to a wedding feast, don't sit at the seat of honor. What if someone more distinguished was there and that was their seat? The host will come tell you, move. This isn't where you're supposed to go. You're supposed to go at the foot of the table. I kind of added my words to that. But Jesus is reminding them of that shame and embarrassment. See, this Pharisee had a big banquet, first of all, on the Sabbath. I don't know how he did that without breaking a few rules. Had everybody come in there, and don't you know, I was just thinking about an awards banquet. And whenever people come in there, they get in there early so they can get the best seats, so they can see and they can be right there in the front and all of that. And would that be something for somebody to come say, oh, Debbie, you're not supposed to sit there because, somebody that is really important is supposed to sit there. Bring you and your husband back to the back. That would be very humbling. So the best plan is to work hard into the Lord and be obedient to him and let him raise us up. So take the lowest place and let the host bring you up if that's what is meant to be. See, through this portion of Luke, at this banquet, there's just a lot of stings, if you want to call it that. I mean, Jesus is always teaching, but he's got some people here that really need to have a heart check. 12 says, then he turned to his host. When you put on a luncheon or a banquet, don't invite your friends, brothers, relatives, rich neighbors, for they will invite you back. Instead, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Then at resurrection of the righteous, God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay. Hearing this, a man sitting at the table with Jesus exclaimed, what a blessing it'll be to attend the banquet of the kingdom of God. See, I'm kind of thinking that this man is thinking, I better break the tension in the room. This is getting a little testy here. I don't know. I'm uncomfortable. So maybe he's trying to kind of smooth things over. But the deal is everybody is invited to God's table. Who are we to decide who should come or where they should sit? This is all about the kingdom. Verse 16, Jesus replied with this story, a man prepared a great feast and sent out very many invitations. See, I think that this certain man was the first man to ever send out the save the date invitations. Until I continued reading in a commentary, it was talking about it was customary for them to send 2 invitations out. But in Israel's history, God's first invitation came from Moses, the prophets. The second invitation came from his son. So God sent the first save the date invitation out. And people aren't listening to that one either, are they? come to the bank, come, the banquet is ready. So it's finally there. But they all began making excuses. One said, I bought a field, I must inspect it. Please excuse me. Another one said, I've just bought some oxen, I need to try them out. And then another one, I just got married. We still have excuses today and reasons that we can't follow God. Maybe we have reasons and excuses that we can't even go to church right now, just for a 1 hour or a 2 hour service, whatever your church does. Because you know what? We start thinking about everything that we could be doing. We'll do church later. We'll do it next Sunday. We've got some flowers to plant. We've got a soccer game to go to. We've got other things to do. We don't have time for that. So the man sent his servants to the streets to invite the needy. God sent his son to the whole world for the needy. Jesus will be calling us to the wedding supper of the Lamb. See that in Revelation 19, 6-9, when God and his beloved church will be joined forever. Then the servant returned and told his master what they said, and the master was furious. Go quickly into the streets. And this is where they invited everybody. And I thought in verse 23, it was interesting because so his master said, go out to the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge. Another version says, compel anyone you find to come. So compel them. The outcast needed to be convinced that they were welcome, because see, they had been pushed back. Nobody talked to them. They didn't feel like that they could possibly be invited to something like this. They had to convince them. Verse 25. Oh my goodness, Elizabeth, I'm running out of time. But I want to address this one. Verse 25, a large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, if you want to be my disciple, you must by comparison hate everyone else. Your father, your mother, your wife, your children, your brothers, sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. So this was not hate in the sense that we think of hate. This was that you love him more than you love them. Because God loves family. And the law of loving family is important, but it's not an excuse to not serve God. And then talking about carrying your own cross, that, don't you know, that horrified the listeners? They knew that when someone carried a cross, that they never came back. It was a one-way trip, and it ended at the site of the crucifixion location. And in the Roman era, when they did this, and I hadn't thought about this before until I read this in a commentary. They first hung the cross on that person and then erected the cross. I don't even have anything to say about that. It's all awful. I can't imagine. So on down to verse 34. Salt is good for seasoning, but if it loses its flavor, how do you make it salty again? So why salt? Salt's only useful when it has the nature of salt. It enhances foods. It preserves. It can actually be used in cleaning, purifying. Being salty requires planning, sacrifice, and commitment. So for us to be salty, We need to stay in the word. We need to continue praying to Jesus. We need to have a relationship with him all the time, because there's going to come a day that somebody comes up to you and asks you, why are you so happy? Where do you get your joy? What is that little conversation that you can have with them if they only have 10 seconds? What can you have? It's like that elevator speech. You only have just a few moments to testify to somebody and let them know where your joy comes from. Do you have something prepared that you can speak? Are you salty? Psalms 80, 1 through 19, and I'm going to do that real quick because there's just one thing I wanted to talk about in there. Psalms 80, verse 3, turn us again to yourself, O God. Make your face shine upon us. Only then will we be saved. Notice it says, turn us again. See, he never turned away from us. The writer, Asaph, knew that people turn away from God. We need to focus all the time on our, what are we focusing on? Focus on what you're focusing on. Pray that you turn again to God. Ask him to help you. Ask him to into your heart and to just give you that urge, that nudge that you need to be able to move forward in your day. 3 times in that it talks about that. In verse 3, verse 7 says, turn us again. And verse 19 says, turn us again to yourself, O Lord. Proverbs 12:27, lazy people don't even cook their own game they catch. What in the world? But the diligent make use of everything they find. We need to be diligent today, don't we? The path of the godly leads to life. That life does not lead to death, because see, we read in Deuteronomy that he tells us your choices are life or death. And then he gives you the answer, choose life. So today, pray that you are the salt of the earth through your relationship with Jesus. Pray with expectation. Look at the people, the Israelites, as they're getting ready to cross the Jordan. They might have been a little nervous at first, but they had their eyes focused on the ark, and they were going with expectation. Pray that you won't lose sight of your salt and your light. Pray that Jesus is the Lord of your life today. This is a magnificent Monday. I am so glad that you joined us this morning. Come back tomorrow. Elizabeth will be here tomorrow. And until then, love somebody and dream big. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.